Hey YouTubers, today we're working on a Chrysler Seebring convertible, and what I'm going to be doing today is changing the top on this. This has a convertible top obviously, and it's ripped. The back glass has separated from the vinyl, so it's leaking a bunch of fluid inside of the vehicle, plus the seals around the windows are kind of tattered and worn out, so a lot of wind noise. I don't know about actual rain coming into the windows since I've never driven this vehicle, but the owner definitely complained that there is a lot of water getting in through the back glass. This is a problem that happens on a lot of these older convertibles. The glass delaminates from the vinyl depending on how it's sealed and bonded on there, and so it just needs to be replaced. So I'm going to show you guys what she got, and then I'm going to take you guys along with me on the adventure of changing this convertible top out. Okay, so as usual, if you like the videos I make, click like so I know to make more of the same, and if you want to see more when I make them, hit subscribe. Let's get into it. First and foremost, before we get into the actual installation process, let me show you what was purchased. So this is the top that I just pulled out of this box, and it has this extra piece, which is where the back glass is. But the first thing that you're going to notice on this is that there is no glass on this. It's vinyl. This has a vinyl window. I'm guessing that's because this was substantially cheaper than getting the one with the glass in the back. But I already laid this on top of the car so that you could, well, so that I could see that it matches what's already on there. Everything seems like it's gonna line up. Okay. And so that's just one of those things that you have to do when you buy something like this. Before you take the whole top off and start fiddling with it, you want to make sure that what you have is going to replace what you have. And it appears that it's going to do that. It's just that this is going to have a plastic glass in the back. It's not going to have any rear defrost. And you know, I'm guessing this is all just a cost-saving measure. I'm sure you could buy the original top with the glass and all that stuff, but it would be substantially more expensive. Doesn't matter. The point is we want to make sure that we got a top on here that's not going to leak water into the vehicle once it's installed. And it looks right. Everything looks like it's going to line up. So the next step in the process is that we're going to take the top off of that Chrysler Seebring. Let's go. Before I start, I might want to mention that it's very cloudy and overcast today, and also there are no planes flying overhead. There's an aviation training school right next door, and they're usually doing a bunch of maneuvers. There's no planes flying today, so I'm guessing that there either is or is going to be bad weather. So I'm kind of racing against the clock here. First thing I'm going to do is partially open this top, just unclip the front part, raise it up a little bit, inspect the front to see how that comes off, and the back to see how it comes off. The sides are usually pretty self-explanatory. It's just the back section where it is inside the body of the car is different from one manufacturer to another, and then the front usually is pretty self-explanatory also. My main concern is this section right back here. I got to figure out how that comes off so that I can take the old one off and then put the new one on. So let's get it. I started disconnecting the inner lining. This is just here for noise reduction and comfort. Doesn't serve any purpose as far as weatherproofing the vehicle, but there are a bunch of these little elastic tabs this and this, and then there's more around there. Not sure how much of that I will actually have to remove from the convertible assembly to change the upper part, but I undid that on this side, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. But I'm going to show you guys real quick. So I have the top in the closed position, not latched, and in the back, all the way in the back here, behind this gray trim, is a bunch of 13mm nuts, and they go all the way around the side, behind the back seat, on the side of the back seat along here, and they are all holding the back of this convertible top. So I'm going to go in and get a ratchet and a 13mm and possibly an extension, and I'm going to undo all of those and see if that releases the top from the back side. And if it does, great. I will just start working on releasing the top from the front side. And then there are some sliding retainers that you slide the top across. I'll show you guys once I get the back and the front off. And once you get those off, then it's just replacing it. So let me go get a 13, take those bolts off, and then see how much progress that gives me. I don't want that to fall down behind there, and then I got a new problem. I have to take this whole bottom piece of trim out to get that nut back. Removing those bolts, got these brackets loose. And so the back part is detached now, which is good. That's good progress. There's the inner lining has screw-on points. Like, let me see if I can show you right where that hole is, and then there's another one around the side. And these fasteners all the way in the back here are black, so it's hard to see, but they are actually Phillips head screwdrivers. So the fasteners that hold the inner lining along the side on the top, those are a T20 Torx, but the one down here is Phillips head screwdriver. So if you try to put a Torx on it because you can't see the head, you're going to be here all day. Anyway, so this back part was a success. I just undid all the bolts all the way around, and then those brackets that hold the convertible top along the edge on the outside is loose. There's nothing holding it. Now I'm gonna go back up top and try to peel it back and see how far I can get. This top edge has all of these T25 Torx holding this plastic trim in place, and so I'm going to remove those and see if I can't get to the fasteners that are holding this whole front bracket in, because this front bracket is what's holding the convertible top to the front side of it. And then once I get that off, then I can start peeling the convertible top back and then get to the fasteners that are in the middle that kind of slide in place. So I'm gonna take these off and then deal with that bracket. That bracket removed, now we can see this is the edge of the convertible top, and there's a bunch of staples holding it in place. I hate picking staples, but I tell you, the one part of this job that I don't care for is picking staples. So there ain't nothing to it but to do it. Time to pick some staples. And guess what? The skies opened up. I got halfway through pulling those staples on that front piece, and then it started raining. So I had to pause that part, kind of reattach the back so that if it does rain too heavy, it's going to drain to the outside of the car, not the inside. And I'm on pause for now, so we'll continue this video when the rain stops. Here's where we are. I'm going to give you guys a rundown. So I undid all the staples, peeled it back. There is a cable that runs through the assembly. It goes from the front here through this little hole, and then it goes through the back. It goes to the back where there's a spring. Here, I'll show you where it mounts. So it mounts on the actual assembly here on this with there's a spring in here on this cable, and it's bolted to this, and this goes through the convertible top, and then there's a rivet that holds it in place right there. So I'm going to drill that out and put a new rivet when it's all said and done. Then there's a rubber trim here that's held on by a grommet, and you peel that back, and then there are some T25 Torx that hold a metal rail. I think this is the metal rail, but anyway, the metal rail, and that is pinching the convertible top material onto this, holding it in place. Okay, so there's this spring in here inside this little guide that's mounted to this rail. This is one of the brackets that's holding the convertible top onto the body of the car, but there's this spring, and it goes through this little eyelet hole and creates tension on it, kind of pulls it as the top is opening and then closing. I didn't have to take this off to get the convertible top off, but I did have to disconnect it because this entire bracket, all of the brackets, so there's 4 different sections. This is a side section, and then there's an intermediate, and then a center section, and then same thing on the other side. And the convertible top is held onto these brackets with these staples. So this is rubber, and it's stapled on here. So it's stapled on the front, on the back on these brackets. It's stapled on the front on the brackets, which it's just a plastic strip that's riveted onto there. And then on the sides, it's held on. This had double-sided sticky tape, so I'm going to put some more double-sided sticky tape and then stick it to that. And then there was the metal piece that was pinching it in place, and then you had the cable running the full length. This whole thing is out of here now. It's just a matter of lifting it out, and then I'm gonna set it on that table over there and take everything that's on this convertible top off that has to go on a new convertible top. I just left it here so that I could show you guys. Oh, and also there are these plastic strips, and there's 3 of them, and they go into these rails. So this is the back rail, this is the middle rail, and this is the front rail. And those plastic strips, they just kind of push down in there. You got to poke them in there, and then get a flat screwdriver or something and just poke them in there as best as you can. As far as the interior piece of the convertible top, the insulation piece, this had to come off because it was in the way. There are a few more pieces in the back that had to be removed to get to the convertible top, and then there was these are mounted to the inside piece, and these are just pieces of elastic with these brackets, and these are all held on by T25 Torx throughout the length. It just keeps this snug against the body of the car for comfort and noise levels. So they don't really serve a purpose other than driver comfort, but you got to put them in when you're putting everything back. So I'm just going to leave this like this. There's nothing else going on here, and I'm going to take the convertible top off and completely disassemble it. The new convertible top, I stapled the edges. There's a plastic ridge sewed onto the edges that go onto the 5 metal flanges that bolt around the outside. I numbered the pieces, the flanges, before I took them off of the old ones so that I knew exactly which way they went in and which way was facing up. And then I stapled them to the flanges to the new convertible top. Then so there are these ridges that go in here, came out of the old ones. Once you go to put it back together, you'll see what I'm talking about, and you just push them in. Just take a rubber mallet, put them in place, and tap them into place. They'll go in, and they can slide side to side so that it's centered. That's an alliteration. And then once you do that, installing the flanges, the brackets all the way around, what I did was I had the convertible top to where the front of it was facing straight up, so there was very little tension on this. And then I put all of the brackets in and then snugged them up with the bolts so that they would be in place. And then once I closed the convertible top, then I had room to tighten all the bolts up. So the nuts, I should say. So see, the nuts are all tightened up, and you staple the convertible top to the flange on the back side. There's rubber on the back side of these brackets, and you staple this to this, and then once it's bolted in place, the pressure of this bracket being pressed against the body of the car is going to hold it in place, because those staples aren't really going to hold in that rubber very well, but they're not going to come out when it's pressed against the body of the car and it's bolted up. So once that's bolted in place, nothing's going anywhere. Then there's Velcro that holds this inner lining to the convertible top. You just pull it, put it in place, make sure that it's nice and straight and neat. And then there are these pieces that they screw on to these brackets where you see those little holes. So that little hole and then that little hole, and so this goes up in place. Of course, since this new convertible top is just a plastic window, there is no defrost. This is no longer used. What else? I think that's pretty much it. I gotta do some trim work on the outside, and then I already pulled that cable, so the cable is already attached down here, and I pulled it through with a piece of wire to where it's coming out up here, and then it pulled itself back through. So now I'm gonna have to fish it through again. Fortunately, so I started stapling this just kind of to see where it goes and to see how it was going to be snug on the top, and I have it lined up to where I want it. It's going to be fine. Everything looks fine. The top is nice and tight. Once those cables are pulled tight, this will be snug. Everything works. The top opens and closes the way it should. There are no leaks anywhere that I can see. I didn't pour water on it yet. I'm gonna wash it off when I'm completed. So I'm gonna fish those cables back out, and then once I fish the cables out, then I have to drill out where this rivet is, because the cable attaches to where that rivet is, and I'll put my rivet gun and rivet that in place, and then I'll finish stapling up the front here and put the bracket that holds it in place, and then the piece of plastic trim that goes on top of that, and then it'll just be a matter of installing all of these metal rails and gaskets. So there's a metal rail and a gasket that goes here, and then in the middle of this piece, I never took this out, this has nothing to do with it, and then in the front here there's a metal rail and a gasket that goes here, which also had nothing to do with it, but I took it out anyway. But in hindsight, I didn't have to do the one in front. So when you're doing this, you only got to take off the metal rail and the gasket in the back here, because the convertible top is tucked behind that metal rail, so don't do the front. All right, I'm gonna finish putting it together and then show you guys the finished product. And there it is, completed. It looks really nice. Kind of wish it had the glass instead of the plastic on the back, but it is what it is. Everything is nice and tight. It's very smooth. Fit and finish, as far as the fitment quality and everything lining up where it's supposed to, I'd give it a solid 9 out of 10. Some of the holes weren't quite right, but they weren't a big deal. You know, it was like where screws would go into trim, I could just poke a hole through the vinyl and it was fine. Not a big deal. The only tip that I have for you guys, if you're doing this, make sure that you bolt up all the brackets in the back and have this nice and tight. And then there's screws that go through trim here. You make sure you bolt that up nice and tight before you make your adjustment for the front. So you bolt all that up, and then you close this down almost to where it's latching, and then pull it forward, and then you see where it is that you have to staple it, because I stapled this blindly and I stapled it too tight to where the roof wouldn't close, and then so I had to pull all the staples back up. Luckily it was only like maybe a ½ inch difference, so it was easy to salvage. It's not overlapping, the staple holes don't show or anything like that. It's fine. It's just that if I had took my time and lined up the front the first time before I stapled it, I wouldn't have had to do it twice, so that was my fault. Difficulty level, I would give this about a 4.5 out of 10, just because a lot of the stuff isn't it's not very clear where things came out of when you were removing it, so when you're putting it back, you're just kind of like, where, you know. But other than that, actually installing it. I sweat a lot today putting this top in. It gets hot in that car even with all the windows down, but it wasn't hard. So take your time, do it once and do it right. Have fun, guys.